Hey everybody, this is Deb with Truthification Chronicles, and I wanted to bring this to you because I saw it and I thought, yep, people need to be aware of that. So, I did a little search for fascism and check out what happened. Now, I did it on DuckDuckGo because I don't like using, Google. So, look at what comes up. Of course, the first entry is fascism, Wikipedia. And then over here, they have the Wikipedia article. But look! There's a little difference between them. Look at this one. Fascism is a form of radical right-wing authoritarian ultranationalism. Fascism is a form of radical authoritarian ultranationalism. What did they add to this? Radical right-wing. Yep, they're working on it. And I'm telling you, this kind of online Wikipedia encyclopedia type thing, which is where everybody goes to get their information. Well, of course, not really intelligent people, because we understand that it is very flexible. But a lot of people go to Wikipedia, and that's where they get their facts. So what's going to happen when they look up fascism? Because that, is one of the buzzwords that the left wing is using right now. And they see that it says it's a form of radical right-wing authoritarian ultranationalism. Well, right there, pretty much, it says, see, it's the Republicans that are fascists. When in reality, if you actually look at the real definition, like, at Merriam-Webster, you find out that the people who are actually being more fascist are the liberals, because they are trying to stifle anyone who disagrees with them. That's the difference between the conservatives and the liberals, because conservatives go, you disagree with me, I disagree with you, okay, so we just live with each other, because that's called tolerance. That's the actual definition of tolerance. I don't agree with you, but I will treat you well anyway, and I will respect that you have a right to have a different opinion than me. But that's not what we're experiencing on all these social media outlets. We're seeing a targeted effort to try to get rid of anybody who disagrees with their politically correct worldview. And this is what's really disturbing about it, because that free speech, the ability to allow dissenting voices to be heard, is something that our country is built on. And when we have entities as big as Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and Google that are saying any voice that disagrees with us is not going to be heard, that should distress us all. So I wanted to show you this. And yes, if you click on this, you can actually see that it says that. And, Wikipedia, for those who might not know, I think you probably all do, but just in case, Wikipedia is made up where you can go into an article and you write it yourself. I mean, this is written by just regular people. Now, I'm not a real big Wikipedia person, so I don't know how to go in there and alter articles. But even if I did, okay, and I went in, I changed that and I got rid of the radical right wing part of it, it would be changed immediately. If it's even allowed at this point. Because you see, Wikipedia has this thing that's called the bot, the MagikBot. And the MagikBot goes through and it finds articles that are being changed often, like back and forth, back and forth, back and forth within minutes, and lots of changes going on, and it freezes them. And of course, it freezes them in a liberal fashion. So whatever it's saying, it's going to have a liberal leaning. And of course, the people who put Wikipedia together are liberals in their ideology. So whenever the article is frozen, they'll make sure that it is frozen with that liberal slant to it. So yes, the MagikBot is why we can keep going in and doing that and changing it, but it's eventually going to be locked. And I don't know how many times it has to be changed, but it will eventually be locked. And this is something we have to be really careful about, because so much of our information now is online. And the problem we have is that you can change something online within seconds. So if there's an article on a website and it says one thing, it can be changed the next time you refresh the page. So this should concern us all, I think, and especially as a teacher. I've said it before, but you might not know this, but a lot of textbooks now are going online, and they're all electronic now because, physical textbooks cost money. And of course, the online ones do, but you don't have the printing cost. And printing costs for textbooks can be kind of expensive because they usually have color pictures and things. And so it does get a little expensive when a school has to buy a whole big bunch of them for all their different students. And I mean, think about it. If it costs $20 a book even, that's what the school has to pay. Multiply 20 by how many students have that particular class. It may be 100. And, it adds up pretty fast, especially in high schools where you have several different classes. So, yeah, it's something that has concerned me for a while because I was still teaching when they started making that transition over to the electronic books. Now it's pretty standard. I mean, there are very few actual hardback textbooks anymore in schools. And when they were doing this, my thought was, how do we know when we approve these textbooks? Because they have to go through an approval process. And, usually the committee is made up of teachers and parents. And they take these textbooks and they look through them. And then they have to give their opinions. Is it something that they recommend or they don't recommend? And then, the decision is made as to which one the school's going to use. Because you only have, at least in Indiana, I'm just speaking from what I know in Indiana. But here they have a list and it has to be on the approved list. So you only have certain choices. I mean, you can get a waiver and get something that's not on the approved list, but for the most part, they need to choose from the books that are listed. And that in and of itself can be problematic if you've got a bunch of different liberal type groups in charge of all the books. So, yeah, there are a couple in particular that I know of that are like that I would not want to use their textbook materials. But anyway, with that, the schools have decided that they're going this route with the electronic thing, which I do understand on one level, but on the other level, like I said, it can be changed. So how do we know that the textbook that was approved by the teachers and the committees, how do we know that's the same textbook that the kids are actually reading? Because it can be changed in a heartbeat. All it takes is a few keystrokes, and it can say something totally different. How do we know the history they're reading is really genuinely the history that happened? We don't know. Unless you're reading the books along with your kids, if you happen to have kids that age. So it's one of those things that has concerned me. And the same thing applies to everything online. Because how do we know what is real? And if you access something one day, it could be changed a few days later. In fact, if you're writing a paper and you need to cite a particular article from online, you are supposed to put on there the date that you accessed it because things change. And it's also wise when you come up against things like that, when you do that search and you find out that it has two different definitions that something's been added, it's always good to do a screenshot of that so that you have it just in case they come back and they say, oh no, it never said that. But in this case, I think this is probably going to be locked at some point if it isn't already. And, it's just one of those things that this MagikBot is set to do. It goes out, it finds things, and it stops people from being able to post on them. And they do it all under the guise of saying, well, it's protecting the integrity of the site so people can't, come in and have the trolls trash it and everything. Well, the problem is, how they define trolls. We covered that in the Ben Garrison thing, right? And that's how they see us. And they think that the reality that we live in is not a reality because it doesn't line up with theirs. And so we really are dealing with separate realities here. That's something that, we need to keep in mind because how do you know which one is which? Well, that's why you need to get your information from many sources. I personally don't recommend that you only read one news source. I mean, you really need to have several different news sources with different points of view. Because if all you're reading is like, Huffington Post, you're going to only get that viewpoint, and it puts you in a little bubble. Well, the same thing happens with conservatives a lot of times. We read only things that suit us, that fit what we want to believe. And sometimes we don't understand. It keeps us from understanding what people outside of our little bubble are believing. And so that's one reason why I used the Huffington Post article, because I wanted to show you their reality compared to our reality. And this is what's going on here with the whole fascism thing. There are two realities, and they are trying their best to paint us as this fascism. But, it says right here that fascism is forcible suppression of opposition and control of industry and commerce. Who's trying to do that? Who's trying to forcibly control industry and commerce? Like, trying to tell you that you can't have your own insurance, health insurance, that you have to have the government insurance because, we don't need that kind of competition. It's crazy. Why would you not want that? What would be the incentive for the government to do well if they're the only health care in the world? Plus, if you're giving the government total control of health care, you have essentially signed your life over to the government health care. Because if they don't like a certain group of people, then they will eliminate that certain group of people. Because why waste healthcare dollars on someone that isn't worth it? Especially like the elderly or the very, very young. They see them as disposable. Why waste money on them when you can put the money into the working population? Yeah, anyway, but the forcible suppression of opposition is what I like, The forcible suppression of opposition. Let's see, who does that? Could it be all those social media companies that Trump was at their summit talking about today? Yeah, gee, I kind of wonder. And so much is going on today. I mean, I'm sure you've already heard of the executive order that Trump put out, and they're going to get that census question taken care of. I mean, they really are going to find out who is a citizen and who isn't. That's a priority for the Trump administration before 2020. And you'll find out why, because it has to do with voting, it has to do with election security, and it has to do with redistricting. And that's the major part, because the Democrats don't want to lose some of those seats, and they don't want to lose the funds that go with them. Because when you have more people, you get more government funds, and that's what they don't want to lose, because that's what they use to bribe their people with, their voters. So I wanted to show that to you, and then I'm just going to finish up with a couple of other things that I came across that I thought you'd like to see. This was a very interesting tweet. POTUS actually retweeted from this, and notice the name of these people are Save the Littles. And if you look at this, check out the picture. 2 little kids. Yep, Save the Littles. So I thought that was kind of interesting that that's the person that he retweeted. And it was really interesting because this person doesn't have very many followers or anything. It only has 513 followers. And they've only made 1,633 tweets. And they're following 88. So kind of interesting that that's where we're at this point. And they just said President Trump, best president ever. Yeah, he really is. This is such a historic time. It really, really is. I wanted to give you a heads up on this. This is from the House Judiciary. And yep, guess what Nadler is up to? They're having a hearing, and it is on Lessons from the Mueller Report Part 3. This is the third part. They've already had 2 others. Constitutional processes for addressing presidential misconduct. So that's going to be Friday, July 12th, which that should be when this comes out. So if you get a chance, it starts at 9 o'clock or 9 o'clock-ish. I've found that they usually don't start for 15 to 20 minutes after it says, but sometimes they do. Anyway, that's what's going to be out there, and I'm sure there'll probably be a live stream of that. So I think, if I can remember, I'm going to watch that tomorrow morning because it could be very interesting. Constitutional processes for addressing presidential misconduct. They are trying so hard because they're scared. And then I wanted to show you this one. And yes, the court rules President Trump can defund this organization, will cut almost $60 million in taxpayer funding. Wouldn't that be nice? Yeah. And this had to do with the Ninth Circuit, too. I think they were, the last month, a 3-judge panel from the Ninth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals granted the Trump administration's request to lift national injunctions ordered by lower federal courts. So there are things going on, definitely. And this was the entire appeals court upheld defunding in a 7-4 decision. Thought that was very interesting. So maybe we've got some people in there on the Ninth Circuit Court, and we're going to start seeing some different kinds of opinions coming out of there. So I wanted to point that out to you. I'm not going to link to this one because if I do, it will probably get me the big D from YouTube. So there's getting to be a lot of words we don't say anymore, aren't there? But that's okay. We're going to get around it. We definitely are. So anyway, that's what I've got for you on this one. I want to thank you for stopping by, and I'll see y'all later.